Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today I'm going to be talking to Dre Evans, Dr. Multifamily, who is an active multifamily real estate investor. He's also a multiple best-selling author and the founder of That's My Property. We're going to be talking about exactly how he's putting together multifamily real estate deals, best type of multifamily deals to be investing in, and exactly how anyone can get started in the world of multifamily real estate. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below. Make sure you judo chop that like button so other people just like you can find this video. And as always, if you like money and you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. We'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. All right. Well, very excited to be sitting here with Dre Evans, local here in San Diego, big multifamily investor, and just really excited to have you. Thank you very much for making the journey all the way here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Um, so I want to start with your story. You grew up in Chicago. You were a triplet.
Right.
And I know you didn't have the best upbringing based on some of the stuff in the books and all that. But why don't you kind of tell us about how you came from that and got into the real estate game?
Okay. There was I survived a drive-by shooting, and at the time, I had an opportunity of a lifetime. The man that I considered my enemy at the time told me about a school called West Point. And so from there, I found out about the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, applied with my brothers. We had a pact that we knew that we wanted to go separate ways, but we always knew that we wanted to go to undergraduate together. So
That's
we
awesome.
applied and we went to the Naval Academy. Barely graduated my first year. Struggled because I came out of Chicago Public Schools. And the next thing I know, majored in engineering, graduated at the top of my class. I learned so much. I had a lot of relationships that I got forged and mentors and lesson learned, and came out here to San Diego as a naval officer, was doing my thing. And shortly after that, I connected with another Naval Academy graduate who graduated 2 years before me, and he told me about the word called multifamily. And
Mm.
we're sitting at a Starbucks coffee shop, and I'm like, man, bro, until I come out with "Prove Them Wrong," which is the Wall Street Journal book, until I come out with that book, there's no other way I can do to provide for my mom or put on for my family, put on for the city. He's like, you should buy a multifamily, and I'm like, what's that? And then it literally took off from there. He For the next 2 hours, he was sitting there trying to explain it to me. He even took me to his 3 unit that he had in Bay Park, and everything was just like a punch in the face. I was overwhelmed, but something in my gut said it was a sign from God that took that time to map everything out the way he did and the way everything connected. And I would just from there podcast everything I could on real estate with a specialization or focus on multifamily. YouTube, any book I could, I read it all, anything on multifamily real estate. And then my first deal was a 4 unit MPB. And from there, it was just like boom, 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 like a domino effect. Michael Block always says it, the law of the first deal.
Mm.
And that was another thing that I stuck to and I believed in, like, hey, if I do this deal, I ran the numbers, it cash flows, yes, it's steep and it's going to be difficult. I was in escrow for about 3 to 4 months, getting hit with fees, getting hit with fines.
Hmm.
My broker telling me, "Nah, Dre, this is not it. I think at some point, like, this is stupid. You should pull out." But I was like, "Nah, like, I believe in this," and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Wow.
That's the skinny of it.
Yeah. So what was it that he told you about multifamily that made you in that Starbucks conversation that flipped the switch for you? And I want to preface that with because I think a lot of people they want to own rental property, but they might be have a mental block on owning like more units than
hmm
just a single family home or maybe like a small duplex. So for your first one to be a 4 unit, tell me about that.
I will say this before I even delve into the details of the 4 unit. As you know, there's so many different things you can do in real estate. I think that I get this a lot from the podcast and from my own meetup. And when people are approaching me, asking me these questions, and I say to them, I never thought that I would own anything past like a single family home. That was my primary residence. I never thought I would own a rental property. And so I always tell them I'm not the guy to tell you why to do something or how you should do something. But what I will say is everybody has certain strengths and talents that they have, and to apply those in a niche in real estate. And I think for me, I got lucky in the sense that I had the analytical background from engineering, so I wasn't afraid of the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I had the hustle and grit from Chicago. It's also just being from the Naval Academy, so in that leadership. So it was easy for me to, okay, if I want to syndicate, I can do it. If I don't feel like doing that one day and I want to go and just fund this deal on my own, I could do that too.
Mm.
And I think that just happened to me in that lucky sense. God willing allowed me to do that. But I would tell people that I know people in San Diego that do buy single family homes and do well. And I know you're probably like, what? Like, there's not too many people that do that, but they found their niche. The
Mm-hmm.
same way some people do note investing, some people flip. I know quite a bit of flippers in San Diego that crush,
Yep.
but that's their thing. They might have
Mm-hmm.
that contracting background. And so that's what I say to people is, yes, invest in real estate hands down, but find out, it's not to say that you can't own rental properties. You could just put property management in place and by all means be successful. But if you really probably want to scale faster and probably even enjoy what you're doing, figure out if there's a way to combine a talent or a strength with
Mm.
that to really take off.
Yeah, I like that. And what was it that drew you to multifamily as your niche?
I think naturally it was just him saying the word. I didn't know any better.
Mm.
I didn't know anything else.
Mm.
Like, he just said multifamily, and I was like, okay, cool, let's go with this. And he's sitting there explaining everything to me. He shows me the 3 unit. I'm like, oh, so that's what these kind of big buildings are. Because I knew what an apartment was,
Right.
but when I think apartments, I would think, the high rises, the
Right.
big things. And so then that's when I realized, wow, San Diego real estate is built on small multifamily. And that's when my eyes started to really open and I started to really pay attention driving down the street of what was what and
Mm.
how things are laid out, how things are structured. And when he's sitting there mapping it all out in front of me, he showed me example properties on Zillow, on Craigslist, on LoopNet, and that's when it all started to kind of come together.
Mm.
So I really would say it was more of a, God aligning things. I don't know what people believe in or whatever, the universe, God, whatever. But for me, given what I've been through in my life, I'm just gonna say I felt like God put us together. He just said those words to me, and it just happened to work out that way.
And it all clicked. And then you made it happen, which is, I think, the other bridge people need to cross is the
Ooh, the
going out,
mental.
the mental part. So let's why don't you break down that first deal for us and
Okay,
kind of,
the
take
mental.
us through it.
The mental is. I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel that as you alluded to, anything in real estate, getting started, that first deal, people struggle with the mental the most. I would say lesson learned. Sometimes if you have a family that understands or a friend group that understands what you're trying to do, power to you. And you probably have more ammunition in your chamber to probably get that first deal done. But if you don't, if your family doesn't believe and can't see it, then you're gonna really have to tap into a different force. And in
Mm.
my case, that was that. I was looking for about a month and I noticed that everything in San Diego, as you know, even with multifamily, given the cap rates and the price points, nothing even really broke even. But I'm like, given San Diego, given supply and demand, forecasting where this city is gonna go, if I was negative about a couple hundred, I'd still do the deal. Rents will
Mm.
go up,
Mm.
basic supply and demand, we can't build anymore, it's gonna work out.
Mm.
And I just really kept falling short based on what was available. I got close. There was a 3 unit, 4 unit in Mission Hills,
Mm-hmm.
right on the hill, overlooked the airport, great views, but it needed a lot of work. And I wasn't necessarily running away from the work, but for what it was, foundation issues,
And on a first
and
deal,
and on
yeah.
first deal and a couple
Right.
other things, something in my gut was like, no, Dre, not this one, because I literally could have went in the escrow. He countered me, and I saw the counter, and I was like, I could take this if I want it, but something was like, just wait. So I sat on it for a week, And then another random day, something in my gut was like, why are you limiting yourself? What if you just remove the cap? Because I was limiting myself to about 1.4 or 1.5 million. And something was like, just remove the gap, see what comes up. And I removed it. And then the next thing I know, there were a few other properties that came online. There was another one in Mission Hills that was a 5 unit. And then there was that 4 unit in PB. And when I saw that 4 unit in PB and I ran the numbers, it was the way it was structured because it was a, all of them were 2 bed, 2 bath townhomes, which was a plus.
Yep.
They were individually parceled, so I could sell them off on their own
Oh,
or just sell
nice.
the complex itself.
Right.
As you know, PB parking is tight, so each unit had two parking spots, and I had big storage units in the back. So I was like, "This
Sounds
is it."
great.
And then
Yeah.
it had this huge, like, front patio courtyard. So you pull up to the property, and I'm talking about a huge courtyard, and then the property sits behind it. And the only thing that was there was just artificial turf. So I was like, man, I could go in here. I can add like a jacuzzi, add like some grills, a little beer thing out
Mm-hmm.
here, some bocce ball court, whatever, really jazz us up and really make it a nice feel, increase the rents too. Had laundry on site, which weren't in the units, which depending on who you ask, some people like it, some people don't. But I liked it because more income.
Mm-hmm.
Ran the numbers. Each of them was going for 2,900 a unit, and at that time, at that price point, for about 1.98 million, being conservative, I was pretty much break even, or depending on how you run your analysis, maybe 100, $200 cash flowing. And I just ran with it. And so I called my broker. I was like, "This is it. Like, we got to do it." And so we put the offer in. We waited for about a week, and eventually went into escrow. And from there, it was smooth. It was smooth up to the point where we had the appraisal was good. Appraisal was over what I purchased it for, and I'm like, oh sweet, this is a pretty cool thing, cool
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. And it was right when we hit that point, kind of all hell broke loose because the loan officer that I was working with was horrible at communication,
Okay.
horrible, and it was like pulling teeth to get him to do any single thing. He wouldn't work on a lot of other things. He'll say one thing, he'll say the next. And because it was my first deal, I started getting hit with all these things from the underwriter, like, you have no experience. I had the capital reserves, but then they were like, you need to come up with another 20, 30 grand last minute. And I'm talking about when we were maybe 2 weeks out before closing. So when you combine that with all the criteria that the underwriter was trying to make me do, in addition to the loan officer's communication, it started to become a lot. Eventually came to a point where we were so far past the closing date at that point, 3 months in, where the seller was like, if you want to continue another week, you got to pay me 5 grand into escrow and $500 every day after that, and the weekends count.
Oof.
And that's the point when Mike was like, Dre, this is not worth it because
Yeah.
you're just losing money, you're throwing away money, and you're gonna lose your EMD. And I remember I was at the gym when he told me, and I was like, nah, I still want to do it because, and my mom and Steph, they was like, this is crazy, this is a sign from God, like, you need to pull out of this deal. And I just remember thinking about Chicago and where I came from, and I'm like, if I do this deal, technically, this $2 million property, I wouldn't have to do anything else in life. If the tenant just paid my rent, we'd be straight. I would have surpassed the boundaries of financial freedom for this family, being the first one to do it. And that's what I held on to. Because also too, that money that I
Right.
would have put up, that 5 grand plus whatever, that $500 every day, the amount of equity and cash flow I would have got on, and the tax benefits I would have got on the back end would have made that look like nothing.
Mm.
And that is why I stuck it through.
Mm.
So I would say mindset of just believing in yourself, even when everyone is telling you no, but you have to have that why. You have to know why you're doing it and see the bigger picture. And you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
get to
No,
the
that's
end.
powerful
Yeah.
for sure. Um, So the last minute, the 20K, I want to know about what you did about that. And then how you put the deal together in terms of, did you buy it with hard money? Did you buy it just personal savings? Did
Mhm.
you put it together with a couple of different people? Or tell us how you put the deal together.
So at the end, we were a week out from getting docs, and there was an issue that came up with the title. Come to find out, that was on the seller's agent side. And so when that happened, I'm like, bro, you've been giving me all this flack about these fees and everything about my end, but look, you missed a step. I said, you're gonna get waive all those fees. Everything I put in escrow is coming back to me. And
Nice.
so I took it all back. And
Nice.
that's how I
Wow.
walked away clean slate. Obviously, my EMD was still there. I got my EMD and I was good to go. In terms of financing, being a veteran, I used the VA loan. So I was
Smart.
one of the first to ever gross at 2 million because I got lucky at the time. Down there used to be a cap, but Donald Trump, when he was president, removed the cap of how much you can qualify for. But obviously, that still didn't mean that it didn't come with challenges. So that was another reason that, in addition to that lack of experience, there was just this like we've never seen this done before. This is $2 million. Like we're not about to loan this on you. And I know that when people think military, they think zero down. It's not that simple. Maybe buying a single family home somewhere, if I'm in Virginia or whatever else it may be, yeah, you
Right.
can do zero down. But when I talk to even my military folks out there, like it's not that simple because you're looking at around 100 grand that you need to have saved up to use the VA loan to buy a multifamily property in San Diego. When you account for EMD and plus the reserves, it's about 100 grand. And in my
Mm-hmm.
case, again, I think just that blessing from God and luck. My family never had made the best decisions with money, especially the men in my family. And I remember one thing that my mother told me when I left and I went to the neighborhood camp. She was like, just save and figure your money stuff out. And I know one thing that I did was I read like a book on just like having a budget and I stuck to that
Mm,
and I saved. And
that's
so when
awesome.
the time came, I had the money. So
Hmm.
that wasn't an issue qualifying. When they were trying to hit me with all the reserves and the EMD, I was like, I got it. And so that's why I would tell people if there's someone that wants to, go that route, you still have to have this saved up. And
Right.
obviously there's the FHA route. Obviously there's hard money. You could do 15, 20% down. There's many ways to do it, or you can do more of a JV deal, which we can definitely touch on. I've had experience in that as well, where I leverage the fact that I can find the property and underwrite the property, and someone will fund the down payment.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that comes with you need that experience though to do that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And what a powerful story about how like you were right there at the finish line. They're throwing you all these extra obstacles and then just thinking back to your upbringing and that being the motivator of like, no, it's not. We're going to get this one across the line. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So what are you working on now? Now I know you're bigger in the multifamily space. You've got a meetup, you've written a couple books. What kind of deals are you working on these days?
Right now, I am pivoting. So as you know, I've had my hand in syndications, and they're great. Nothing against syndications, but one thing that I have always not been afraid of is standing out in the sense that not being afraid to go against the grain.
Mm,
That's, in my opinion, that's been the definition of my life. And I say that to say that when everyone else is doing the same thing, that's the time where I'm like, it's time to do something different. And Warren Buffett has said that before, and other
mm,
people. And so here we go with syndications. I feel like with COVID, it was this big rush. For what it feels like to me, having the podcast and the meetup, it feels like everybody around me it wants to do that and is doing that.
yeah, it got trendy, I'd
It
say.
got so
Yeah,
trendy. Everyone's like, "Oh, I want to syndicate multifamily." And then I
yeah.
know there was that one group, multifamily mindset. No, nothing against them. Great model. I know a lot of people that have been through that program and have done well. But I think it brought a lot of hope to people, but it also like it was almost like if you are not, it's almost like they took a nest and they threw everybody out, and it was like if you don't hatch before you get to the ground and the fly, then that's it. And that's exactly what it was because they put them all in Vegas and they came out just one of many groups, and everyone wanted to do multifamily syndications. But I'm like, you don't even have your system in place to raise capital. Like, okay, I get that you formed this group and you all want to be GPs, but like you have, so how are you going to go run? And then you want to do a 506C at that. So you've never raised capital before. You don't have your system in place. You don't have a deal. So how are you going to go raise capital from accredited investors and you don't have any system in place and you really can't even explain the terminology, like what an equity multiple is in and all. And I saw that trend. And then I just saw the trend of just everybody want to do it. And I'm like, this is time to pivot.
Mm,
So for me,
interesting.
like I said, it's great. And if you have your stuff on lock, do it. Cause I know many individuals that have their systems in lock and they're doing extremely well.
Right.
But for me, I wanted to do pivot and do okay. I'm gonna go back to doing deals on my own as well as just JV stuff because syndications too also involves the idea of I want more of the legacy wealth. And unless you figure out a way to refinance on the back end when they sell and you take the ownership, which one of my buddies did it. You don't hear about it much, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you do that, you got to sell anyway. And I mean, you could make the argument that you could be smart about your money and stack your bread and then go use that to do buy a deal on your own as a syndication. But I really haven't seen that either.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've just really more so seen groups go from deal to deal to deal, and then you sell, you sell, you sell. Yeah, you've done it full cycle, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when it got trendy, everyone was like, oh, yeah, all you got to do is find a deal and raise some money.
Yeah,
But then the dot, dot, dot behind all that is you need the entities, you need to be compliant with the securities laws and all of the things are because as soon as you start raising money, it becomes a completely different animal.
completely
So
different ball game.
So it's definitely not an amateur game. That being said, I think we both really still believe in it and think it's a viable model. It's
Yes,
just it did get really hot there for a minute and I think a lot of people got into it not really knowing what they were doing and got in a little over their heads.
and it speaks to what I was saying at the beginning, just like knowing your lane. Everyone is not meant to raise capital.
Mm,
Everyone doesn't have that sales background, that people person, because as you know, you're always raising. Even
right.
when you don't have a deal, you're
Yep.
always networking, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people just are not. That is just not for them.
Yep.
You just you can do something else. And I just saw that trend, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pivot and do something. Not to say that I still won't do syndications. It's just I rather do things that other people aren't doing and kind of double down
Yeah.
on that. And
So
so that's where I'm at,
what did you pivot into? What are you doing these
and
days?
that's what I'm now. So I was recently under contract on another multifamily property in San Diego. It ended up we were in escrow for about 2 months trying to kink things out. But what hit me was when interest rates started really going all over the place. That changed a lot of dynamics, as you can
Mm,
imagine, because there'd be one day lenders saying this, and the next day the underwriter said this. I got close to getting CD docs, and then sure enough, they're coming back with more stuff. So that I was looking at hard money too on the line, a lot of different funding options, but ultimately, and the seller was patient. Like I came in, I had met the owner too at the beginning, which I think helped me a lot.
mhm.
But in the end of the day, I ended up moving past that deal. So now I am back to looking again for the next opportunity,
Mm.
essentially.
Yeah. So how are you finding deals these days? What are you buying just straight off the MLS or what are you doing for that?
Straight off the MLS, or I'll have brokers send me stuff. I know quite a few of the brokers and agents around town that specialize in working with investors, and so they'll send me stuff too, in addition to whatever I look and find. And actually, I had a buddy send me the one that we saw in Mission Hills, and it wasn't even. It was like offline.
Mm. Yeah,
So
I think that is a huge tip right there. Like whatever type of real estate you're looking to get into, connecting with the brokers that are big in that niche is a great source of business because then
mhm,
all you have to do is say, "Hey, I'm looking for these types of deals. I'm looking for, this many units in this price point. Let me know when you have something." And a lot of times they're just going to hit you before it even goes on the MLS and then you can kind of front run those deals a little bit.
mhm.
Yeah. So, love that as a tip. What about putting the deals together now? Are you doing just your own deals, or are you still syndicating, or are you raising, JVing, hard moneying? How are you putting the deals together?
So the current deal, well, what I'm pursuing now, I'm gonna fund on my own.
Okay.
I have, quite a bit of capital set aside where, okay, this next deal I'll do on my own.
Hmm.
I'll probably do the next one as a JV. And then maybe in the interim, if there are a few syndication opportunities that come about that I like, I'll entertain those. But
Hmm.
I also want to make sure that I also focus on San Diego, which I think there's probably another reason why I haven't done as many syndications
Mm.
anymore, because a lot of the people that I know, they want to syndicate outside of the city.
Yeah.
And I've just determined that San Diego is my primary market.
For everything you're doing, San Diego proper too, right? We're talking about
San Diego
San
proper,
Diego.
personal opinion.
Yeah.
This is just my network is here, my connection base is here. There's no point in me going elsewhere.
That's great. And then what's your exit strategy on these deals? Is this just buy and hold forever, or what are you planning to do with these next couple deals you're doing?
Buy and hold forever.
Buy and hold forever.
Hmm.
So smaller multifamily deals, um, or are you trying to buy like bigger and kind of
The goal is to go bigger.
okay?
Yes. So to eventually get to the point where I can take a few, you know, 12, 15, 20 units in San Diego for sure. That is the goal, the
Yeah.
ultimate goal. You got to reach that.
Okay. And then what tips would you have for people that would be interested in like the multifamily space on kind of like getting into it and what they should know, what to look out for,
Okay.
things like that.
And this is not a plug. I think for me, my background comes with motivational speaking. I was doing a lot of outreach in the communities when um I was speaking about my gang involvement in the past and just giving back to kids. And I just happened again to have that knack for writing. That was why I wrote That's My Property. I never planned to write that. But when I started the podcast, Multifamily by the Slice, and I had the meetup opportunity knocks, there were so many questions. And
Mm,
people were asking the same question, like, okay, well, how do I get started? What do I need to know? Boom, 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 boom. And then I remember everything that I read when I was learning. And there are many phenomenal, great books out there. But a lot of them, from what I saw, didn't necessarily explain things in a way that a lot of people could grasp. And that was like just dumbed down. And so that was the reason why I wrote That's My Property, was because, okay, how can I educate people about multifamily real estate as well as give them a very robust glossary from A to Z in the back of just like, here's everything you need to know. Like, if you read this, like, here's examples. There's some numbers in there, but it's meant to explain in a way that's cool and that
mm,
you can get it. And so once I had that, the people that I met, I direct them to that first. They'll read it, and then I have a conversation with them. I'm not charging people. I'm not gaining anything from it. I'm not trying to bring you on as an investor or anything. I'm just a big believer in, like, pass the torch and help as many people as you can and expect nothing in return. Because if you really think about it, that's exactly what Keegan did to me.
mm.
He didn't charge me for that. He didn't have any strings attached. He was like, bro, multifamily.
Yeah.
Let me show you a few things. And what you do with it is what you do with it. So my thing is the same thing. Okay, read the book. No, it's not for your money, but read the book. Let's talk about it because I'm meeting with you afterwards. I'll answer whatever you want to
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And what you do with what you is what you do with it. And that's just my belief. And so that's what I tell people in terms of if they want to learn more about it. If you got the podcast too, obviously, you've got your podcast, a similar thing, right? People can come on the Founders Club. They can read through, listen to all your episodes and learn a lot. And it's the same way. That's why Ike and I started Multifamily by the Slice. Same objective. Okay,
Right.
you go in here, listen to everything. We're not trying to raise capital. We're not trying to make you guys investors. Just learn from it. Now, if you want to do syndication and you feel like that you just want to be passive, by all means. I know a guy out here that's a millionaire. He's got what, 3 kids, and all he does is LP deals.
Mm.
He loves it because he
Yeah.
can just sit back.
I love LP deals too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm in an LP deal,
Yeah.
in Coronado. So,
Yeah.
like, I get it. It's depending on your goals, your motivations. You have family. What you trying to do in life?
Right.
That's what I tell people.
Yeah, I love that. That's my property. Definitely go and check that out. That's the book right there behind Dre. And eh, having you got the meetup, you got the podcast, you got the book. So that's I like how you have all that set up, and I think the book is a great way to be like, here, read this first, and then come talk to me, and I'll school you the rest of the way. So I think that's cool how you set that all up like that.
I think that's also true to help people because the other question you'll get to people when they're trying to learn, they just want to, oh, can we meet for coffee or can we do this? And I'm like, no shame against you, but I also saying this to help them. I had one guy in particular that wanted to get his license as an agent, and he was working his 9 to 5 job, but he wanted to get the license. And then he was like, hey, Dre, can you connect me with some other people in the game who started off doing the same thing? They were working a 9 to 5, they got their license and they started doing deals and then they started to invest.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And he was like, why? I was like, you don't have your license yet. And I'm like, you got to meet them halfway. And I'm saying this for a reason on the podcast because there are many people that they just want to connect and they just want to ask questions. They want to learn. But I'm like, you have to meet people halfway. If someone is knowledgeable and they're experienced and they've busy and they have things going on, there are a good amount of people that have good hearts that just want to pass the torch. But you got to meet them halfway. And there are some, the other half, that they're like, okay, what's in it for me? Well, if that's the case, then is there something you can do to provide that service?
Mm.
Maybe you can help them with their graphic design, website design, underwrite deals, cold
Right.
call, whatever, drive properties for them, whatever, manage it, whatever your experience is, contracting, whatever. You get the point. I still say that like you have to meet them halfway. And so that's what I say to people. And that was my way of meeting halfway. It's just like when you go to a meetup, and I know a lot of people that are starting out feel this way, sometimes they can feel overwhelmed. And that's because they don't know the vocab. They
Mhm.
don't know the terminology.
Mhm.
So how can you walk up to a person and you want to learn more about multifamily, and they start talking about NOI and equity multiple and cash on cash return and all these different things, and you don't know what that is. And you're like, what's that? And they're not telling you, but the first thing they're thinking in their mind is like, okay, I see what this is. It's a whole different flex and it's a whole different conversation when you can go up into a circle, into a meetup, and you know the lingo and you can talk, and your questions are very more strategic and pinpointed, which
Mhm.
really help you in the end if you really think about it. Because instead of asking a question that you could have looked up or learned about, now you're really asking more of a experience
Right.
question.
Yeah.
And that is the difference. And so that's another reason why I'm like, if you read this, you got the foundation. Now you can, when we have this meetup or we have this call, you can ask me the experience question, ask me the tough one.
Yep.
And then that gives you your ultimate growth.
You're just going to ask better questions,
Exactly.
and then you're going to get better answers.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
I love that. I also love what you just said. We just brought up LP deals. So being a limited partner in the syndication, I think that is also a great way for people to get started.
Phenomenal.
Hey, if you don't want to do it yourself, why don't you ride along with someone that's already doing it? I think the critical component there is basically you're just putting in money and then they're running the deal. They take a percentage of the deal and then there's an equity split after that. But going in on those types of deals is huge because number one, it's just mailbox money. You
Hmm.
literally do nothing other than put the money in and you'll start collecting the checks. Two, if you're with a good operator, you're going to learn a lot because you're going to be in the process. They're going to be walking you through why I'm buying this deal, why I like it, what we're going to do with it, what improvements we're going to do, what we're not going to do. And you really kind of learn the apartment, the multifamily game. Um, but I'm curious to be what your thoughts are on how to vet operators so that and deals so that if you are wanting to be an LP, you don't get burned. Because I think that's the biggest risk is giving your money to people that maybe don't know what they're doing or end up buying a bad deal.
That's a great question. I would say, ooh, I've Ike and I have had many closed door conversations about this on the podcast. I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm sure you know. Let's say you're comparing two different syndication deals, and there's going to be that one deal that has just better numbers. And the investor is going to be like, I got to go with that one because they're paying a 9% pref and you're paying a 7 or a 6. And I tell the first thing I'm going to tell your listeners is that don't get hung up on the numbers because there's so many different forms of underwriting spreadsheets out there, and any of us can go in that spreadsheet and change a few things around and match that exact same number that you're saying that that deal has a better return on.
Hmm.
That's the first thing. So don't get hung up on the numbers. What you should really be looking at is being conservative. What stress test analysis are they performing on the underwriting? So what I mean by that is when all I'm to summarize it and to dumb it down, stress test is basically when all hell breaks loose, how is the deal going to stand? What did the operators, the GPs, the general partners do when they ran the numbers on that deal? When certain all hell broke loose, come such as cap rates changing or interest rates changing, or something happens in the economy, or there's a vacancy, or there's unaccounted for capex or maintenance issues that come up, how will the deal perform?
Mm.
Will it survive? Those are the type of things and the type of questions that you should be looking for in terms of that stress test or when all hell breaks loose. And then from there, I will look at the operators too. If the operator is experience does matter. Some people, depending on who you ask, they get hung up on if they've done a full life cycle deal, which for my listeners that don't know, the full life cycle deal is basically mean they took a deal from its beginning, inception to end, meaning they sold it off and returned all the investors' capital and everybody was happy. I do believe that there's a experience that comes from that. I wouldn't say it wouldn't be a red flag in terms of you all investing with someone like a LP investing with a GP, but just listen to the business plan of the deal. If they have to refinance at a certain point because maybe they are using a bridge loan, and if the deal is hingent on that bridge loan working out because of refinance, that could be a potential red flag.
Yeah. I would be very
I
leery
would
of a
be
deal
very
like that.
leery of that
Yeah.
because, mind you, if something happens and they can't refinance, then what?
Hmm.
The other things I would say I would look at is the fees, the fee structure. What type
Ugh.
of fees are the general partners getting? And there's typical norms like you'll have the 1% when they acquisition fee, or you may have a 1 or 2% at refinance or at sale. But just look at the fees, and if some stuff just seems really too high or it doesn't make sense, that to me is a red flag that the GPs are trying to get too much. Ike and I had, like I said, we had a lot of conversation about this before. On the website, on our website, multifamilyboutasites.com, we have a like a resource. So when it's like a pop up box, and
Cool.
so it's a list of red flags, LPs to look out for because
Mm.
we've had a lot of talks about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. I think, a couple other things to look at too is track record, right? Like how many other successful
Yeah.
deals have they put together?
Mhm.
How many total units have they been a part of in terms of doing deals? And then on the deals themselves, like you were saying, is there bridge financing involved? To me, I would not do a deal like that. I would only do a deal that will cash flow from day one with long-term financing in place, only because to your point, the economy takes a dump, anything happens, like you're good. You're
Mhm.
still going to be good as is from day one. So I think that's hugely important. And then also asking about things like cost segregation and some of the tax advantages of multifamily. And are they passing those along? Because a lot of the syndicators, they will keep that stuff for themselves and not pass it through
Mhm.
to the
Mhm.
LPs. So just some different things to do there. But I do think that's a really great way to kind of dip your toes in the pool in terms of getting into the multifamily stuff.
No, I agree with you. Like you said, again, like we talked about niches and passions and motivations. If you have a family or you just want to travel or you just feel like, hey, I want the tax benefits. I want to still invest in real estate, but I don't want to go find the deal and I don't want
Yeah.
to go through the pain of underwriting and all that. And like you said, man, you can become an LP and truly be hands off and literally just, like you said, mailbox money. You get the tax benefits. You get that K-1 statement every year. You give it to your CPA. You get those tax deductions. It's like being an LP is pretty sweet. You know, as long as you find the right operator, or you if you
Yeah.
stick to the same operator from deal to deal to deal, obviously that's a win. But
Yeah.
being an LP is it's not bad. I do believe that I will shift to that at some point and
Yeah.
just be fully LP.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Again, especially if you can get in the right deals with the right
Mm,
operators. I
yeah.
think that's the asterisk there. If you guys have any questions or want any connections, Dre's probably got a ton. I've got a ton. Just reach out. We can put you in touch with some great operators that are raising money for deals like that. Um, what about what advice would you have for someone doing their first deal on their own?
I would I'm all about the hustle and the grit, but also about being smart, depending on the deal. You see it mostly, especially if you're trying to flip or something, you only have so much wiggle room. And it also depends on the market, of course. But I would really say I would hope that you have someone like a mentor that you can rely on, or someone that I think the smartest way to do the first deal, and some people have different opinions about this because they want to control the whole pie. It's okay to give up a few slices so you can learn. Because
Totally
those
agree.
slices are what you're getting in. Yeah, you're looking at it like, oh, from a monetary standpoint, but really they're replacing that pizza box with slices of experience
Yep.
in contrast. And so I would really say, let's say you're doing a multifamily deal, you're doing a flip, you're doing a short term rental, whatever else it may be, it's okay to give someone an equity stake or a piece of that cash flow in some type of written agreement, because what you can leverage is when those questions come, or there's something that you're not seeing, that person can speak to it or
Hmm.
step in. I would
Hmm.
tell people that if they're gonna do their first deal.
That's a great piece of advice, and it's funny how often that comes up on the show is uh for people wanting to come in because it makes so much sense, right? You find a good deal, you can take it to the RIAs and all the contacts that you've been working on building that are in the multifamily space. Find someone that's a heavy hitter, bring it to them on some sort of a rev share agreement. And yeah, you don't get the full deal, but to your point, you're getting their experience, their connections. If something bad happens on a deal, they're going to know what to do, know how to handle it, have the connections. So I think that's a huge nugget for people to take away on doing their first deal in any market, right? Your first wholesale deal, your first flip, your first multifamily deal, whatever it is, find a heavy hitter that you can work with to kind of shorten your learning curve and most likely you'll still make more money on those deals at a smaller split than trying to do it all on your own and getting all of
Right.
it.
Yeah.
um so, a couple questions I like to ask everyone as we kind of wrap up. What are some of your favorite tools, apps, softwares that help you run your business better?
Trello or Asana, they're
Mm,
great for just a great CRM, and you can use that many different ways from any type of project for properties. I've used it. You can add pictures, graphs, PowerPoints. It's just like almost like a dry erase board, if you want to call it, but more organized and more automated.
mm,
I would definitely recommend that because again, anyone that gets on it, you'll see that it carries dividends. And when you add the app with that too, you could just be on the go. You have an idea, you have something that comes up, you can throw it right on there
yeah.
easily. The other thing I would say, you definitely need a type of, if you're trying to grow a business, you need some type of CRM for email marketing.
Hmm.
I personally use MailChimp. I know there are a few others, but I started with that, so I'm just sticking to that. So MailChimp will be another one.
And I think it's still free if you're under 500 contacts.
It
So
is.
take
So
advantage of that.
yeah, definitely take advantage of that. MailChimp is another one that just stands out to me. Um, those would be in terms of
Yeah.
tools. Those would be
Yeah,
the
that's
two
good.
biggest. PropStream is another good one. Depending on
PropStream
what
for
you're trying
finding deals.
yeah, depending on what you're trying to do, PropStream will be another one. If you've got the plug and you've got a hookup and you can get into LoopNet and use like a broker's code, obviously, if you can get that, then you open up the door real wide in terms of you being able to research and analyze deals. Those would be my
Yeah, those
my
are solid.
notables.
Very solid. Um, okay, what about in 60 seconds or less,
Mhm.
what does it take to be a successful multifamily investor?
Have a why on why you're doing it, why you're investing in multifamily real estate. Be willing to put in the work and have a hustle to do it, but doing it for the right reasons. Because what's going to differentiate the person that's good and great is the why behind it, which why that's important.
Mm.
Because if everyone here says they want to be the next Grant Cardone, I love Grant Cardone, no power to him, he's great, but that's not going to stop you from getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning every morning, or putting in that extra work to do what needs to be due to get it done. If you're just chasing money,
Mm.
so understand why you're doing it. Always being a steward of education. I think people don't realize the importance enough of reading books and audiobooks and podcasts. You always need to be a constant steward of education. I
Yeah,
remember I was taught that first as a naval officer, and it will never fail you. If you have that, you'll be successful.
I love that. Yeah, that's really good. I noticed one thing on that you just brought up, the getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I know that's something that you do or have done. Do you still do that? Get up at crazy early hours, and what's the thoughts behind that?
I still do. That's something that's been ingrained in me, or naturally happened to me in Chicago because of my brother and I would be woken up from like the gunshots or just what was going on in the street. And then when I joined the military, that was ingrained in us. So I've carried that, and I just noticed that it's the one time in your life. And this for my people that even got kids. You probably like, man, I never have the time. Get up at 3, 4 in the morning. You'll have the time. It's that one time where the world is peaceful. Nobody can text you. People are off social media. Nobody can call. And it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to underwrite a property, if you want to read real estate, if you want to listen to a podcast or audiobook on real estate, whatever you're trying to do, whatever your goal is, I don't care if you, whatever your business is, that's a good time. Planning your week, planning your day, that's a good time to do it because
Mm,
all is still. That's why I do it because you get a leg up. Kobe always talks about it. If you do that, it's impossible for people to catch you because that 1 to 2 hours I'm doing every day. Okay, look at how many hours that is in a week, and then a month, and then a year. At some point, you'll never catch me.
yeah, it multiplies like
It
crazy.
multiplies.
Yeah, love that. Very cool. Well, one final question I like to ask to all the guests is: I have two young boys at home, 5 and 7, and I'm curious to what your advice to them would be and the next generation on how to be successful in life and business.
Affirmations.
Hmm.
I would say if I
Hmm.
had kids today, and that's just also just from my experience of working with youth, it's mindset. It's crazy how like you look at people nowadays, and a lot of their traumas are from their childhood. A lot of people's belief systems are from their childhood. I could take the most gorgeous woman in the world and put her in this room, and if every day her father told her or her parents told her that she was the ugliest girl, she would believe that.
Hmm.
It's crazy how powerful your mindset, your affirmations have on you. And so I would tell youth, having them start out with affirmations every day about like, oh, I can do this, or oh, I'm successful in this, because when they get older, it's like we strip it out of kids, or whatever they were taught as a kid, whatever it may be, good or bad, they carry that into adulthood. So if I could figure out a way for them to start thinking like an entrepreneur through affirmations, I would say do that.
I love that. Yeah, I noticed that you are big on affirmations. I think that I read on your website that you even created your logo for "That's My Property" with a post-it note
Yep.
because that literally is an affirmation. That's my property.
Yep.
Where did that come from?
Exactly that, man. I wanted a title that, again, just being different. I love that people name their businesses after their last name, and that's great. I get it. It's that legacy, right?
Hmm.
That stamp. But I just wanted something just in alignment with my personality and what I wanted people to achieve. I wanted people to read "That's My Property" and feel something where they can apply that and take that with them, and it just makes them feel. I want you to believe you can go to everything and be like, "That's my property.
Mm.
That's my property." And a sticky note, like you said, is that I have so many sticky notes on my mirror, around me. That's how I started writing out affirmations to get out of that Chicago, that gang mentality. When I went to the Naval Academy, affirmations, put my goals up. I got them in my car. Every time I get in my car, I'm like, I read my affirmations. There's a sticky note that is basically my goals for the month, and every month I replace it. But it's like when I get in my car, I'm saying it to myself. You're
Mm,
driving it, you're reading it, you don't even realize it.
mm.
Subconsciously tricking yourself
I love that.
to achieve.
Where did that come from? Because that's not something that most kids in Chicago are thinking about or doing. Like where did that come from? Because I couldn't agree more. I think, what you put in and standing guard at the door to your mind are extremely important. And if you, to your point, can trick your subconscious into just thinking bigger, thinking different, going for more, like where did that come from?
At some point, I think that kids in Chicago, it sucks. A lot of kids on the South Side in particular are dealt a bad hand for many reasons. But I think at some point I started to see a trend where I just took a step back and thought about it, looked at my environment, and at some point there was a trend. And instead of me saying, I hope I make it to 21, I hope I make it to 24, which was common around the males around me, something in my mind one day was like, well, what if I do?
Hmm.
And then that kind of what made me think differently. And I think for me also too, my mom, I knew I wanted more from my mom. Even when I was in the gang, I'm like, this is still my rock. This is still my why. So I never saw myself doing that forever. So I'm like, at some point, I've got to come out of this. And at some point, I knew that I wanted to do something for her.
Mm,
So maybe because that was always in the back of my mind as that why
mm,
of that ray of light, that's why that one random day, my mind asked the question, well, what if? And from there, I just kind of carried that.
mm. That's awesome. Brings it full circle to having a strong why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the rest will come. Well, man, I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome conversation. Guys, make sure you check them out. You want to drop your social media handles so they can connect with you
Yes, it's at Dr. Multifamily on all social media platforms. So it's at DR and then Multifamily.
at Dr. Multifamily. Definitely check him out. Check out his books too, guys. He's written a bunch of really great best-selling books. And as always, if you guys have any questions, put them in the box down below. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you like money and you like real estate, this is the show for you. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Appreciate you.
No problem.